Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Shiur number 7 on Chayei Moharan. It's good to be back. Last week we took a short hiatus um, for good reasons. Just was traveling, so unable to make it to my own Shiur. But Baruch Hashem, it is great to be back. And we hit a very exciting milestone this past week. It was the first anniversary of In Breslov Burns a Fire. It on last Friday was the anniversary of us having posted our first ever video on Instagram, which was very, very exciting. What a milestone. So Baruch Hashem, Shechianu Kimanu, it's great to have celebrated such a milestone and great to celebrate every milestone. So with that, I think we should get started on tonight's shiur. Just a reminder that these shiurim are in memory of my maternal grandparents, Menachem ben Dovid Zvi and Illana bas Sarah, whose yahrzeit was just a couple days ago on Zayin Adar. May your neshama have an aliyah. So I hope you all had a very meaningful and inspiring Purim. Last week, before I realized that I wasn't able to make it to the shiur, I was thinking about touching on some sort of ideas on Purim, but I think it's best to stay on track on the journey that we are on for this shiur. So, 2 weeks ago, in lesson 106 in Chayei Moharan, we recounted how Rabbeinu's first meeting with his first chassid, Reb Shimon, took place. And here, what we're going to touch on tonight is a similar recounting from Reb Shimon, but also Rebbe Nachman, who illustrates a second recollection that took place with Reb Shimon. As we begin learning 107, I want us to keep a few things in mind. We're about to recount how the Rebbe, now renowned for his greatness, is recalling moments of past growth. He was reflecting on how he arrived in his current state. And in this process of looking back, of recognizing where we once were, where we are now, and what has changed, I feel is a very essential idea in Avodas Hashem, and when it comes to reaching Dveikus. It's not just nostalgia, it's a method of understanding our personal journey and ensuring that we're moving forward rather than repeating past mistakes, chas v'shalom. So each of us has had moments, I feel, in our own lives. I'm speaking for myself. And there have been times when we face similar circumstances again than we've experienced previously in the past. And that's a position where we have the ability to question, how have we grown? Are we making different choices? Are we applying the lessons that we've learned? Or are we simply going through the same cycles over and over again, chas v'shalom, in a never-ending loop, which we hope for all of our sakes that we never are in that stage. So there's a famous philosophical statement from the Greek philosopher Heraclitus, and I know a bunch of people listening to this shiur are probably thinking, oh no, what's he doing? He's bringing up Greek philosophy. Rebbe Nachman did warn against bringing up ideas of philosophy and wisdom from atheists and atheistic sources, mainly because the danger of listening to such philosophy and internalizing such secular wisdom has potentially to shake up our emunah chas v'shalom if it's too weak, or could get us just distracted from our avoiding the path we're supposed to be on. But I have a quote here that I saw that I think if we pull it out a little bit and try understand a little bit what this philosopher is saying, I feel like we can make it relevant to what we're learning tonight in a way that I feel can help us grow. So I'm just going to preface with that and share with you this following quote, which I thought was very powerful. So the quote goes as follows: "You can never step in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person." So what does that mean? At first glance, this seems like a simple observation about change. Water is always moving, so river is never truly the same one from one moment to the next. Likewise, we as human beings are also constantly changing. We can change emotionally, spiritually, physically. However, through the lens of chassidus and Kabbalah, this idea takes on a much deeper and more profound meaning. And I tried to pull this quote apart a little bit and share. I want to share what I found from this quote. So, as I mentioned, Rebbe Nachman, he discourages secular wisdom, but I'm using this quote only to highlight the superiority of Torah and our understanding of Chayei Moharan in a way that aims to strengthen our emunah. So, as I said, in Kabbalah and Chassidus, we learn that the world is not something that was created once and then left to run on its own clock, chas v'shalom. Rather, Hashem is constantly and continuously creating and sustaining everything at every single moment. And this is known as his Chadshus Habriya, the ongoing renewal of existence and creation. And this concept can be found in davening. We say this every single morning. Hamachadish b'tuvay b'chol yom tamin masa bereishis. That Hashem renews his goodness every day continuously, the work of creation. He's constantly renewing the world and keeping it in existence. So what does this mean? If Hashem would, for even one moment, stop willing the world into existence, it would cease to exist entirely. And the Baal Shem Tov explains that Hashem's speech, the divine utterances, also known as the Asara Mamoris, the 10 words that Hashem used to be able to create the world, this brought the whole world into being and must constantly be renewed at every moment. So just like the river, in the quote that we just heard, is never the same from one second to the next, so too the entire world is being created every single moment. I doubt Heraclitus ever imagined this quote would be used or defined in such a way, but hopefully we're refining this quote and using it for Yiddish purposes. So this understanding, I feel, changes how we see reality. And the world is not old and worn out. It is constantly fresh, constantly new, and filled with divine energy at every single moment. So just as the world is in this state of constant renewal, so the person is never the same from one moment to the next. And I should preface by saying that we're using these ideas as a long introduction for tonight's lesson, and Emir Hashem, it's all going to come clear very, very soon. I hope to tie it all together with the paragraph we're about to learn in the Sefer itself. So the neshama is always in a state of movement, either ascending spiritually, an aliyah, or chas v'shalom experiencing a descent, known as a yerida. However, Rabbeinu teaches us that this yerida, this descent, is never without purpose. It exists solely to bring about an even greater aliyah. There's no such thing as standing still in avodas Hashem. The key is to recognize that even moments of challenge and descent are ultimately steps in a higher trajectory, leading us towards deeper connection and growth. And this is reflected in a Hasidic teaching by the Kotzker Rebbe. I really love this quote. A person may return to the same place, but he is never the same person. I love this quote. So in life, we sometimes feel stuck, as if we're treading water. But the truth is that in every experience we go through, everything that we face, every challenge, every nisayon, the Torah teaches that no moment is meaningless. Every single challenge, every single joy, every mitzvah, every failure, it all shapes us, just like the water in the river from the previous quote from the Greek philosopher Heraclitus never stops flowing. Our journey never truly stops. So in Kabbalah, the river is often used as a metaphor for shefa, the divine flow of energy from Hashem into the world. In Kabbalah and the Zohar, it explains in Bereshis that this divine light, it flows into creation just as a river flows from its source. However, just as a river's waters are constantly renewed, so too in the shefa from Hashem, it has constant renewal. Chadshus Habriya. So this is why we daven every day, why we learn Torah daily, and we constantly strive for devekus, attachment to Hashem. So just as water must keep flowing, our connection to Hashem must always be refreshed and renewed. So now you're probably asking, why introduce a quote from secular philosophy in a discussion about Chassidus and Kabbalah? So the Baal Shem Tov teaches that everything in the world contains sparks of holiness, even wisdom that can come from secular sources. However, if a person approaches such wisdom without any emunah, without Chassidus, it remains dry and it lacks its true depth. This is why I feel, from my own understanding, Rabbeinu's warning when it came to learning secular wisdom and philosophies, especially from atheistic sources. So when we look at this idea through a lens of Torah, a Hasidic lens, we elevate it. We elevate this quote. We take the simple observation that things change, as the quote says, and reveal its deeper meaning. That's why Hashem is behind all change, constantly renewing the world, guiding our growth, and providing an endless flow of divine energy. And now, on top of this, you may be wondering, Yossi, what's with the lengthy introduction, and how does this relate to Chayei Moharan and what we're about to learn? And my friends, let's dive into today's lesson. Without that further ado, tonight we'll be learning 107. Be'ezus Hashem, with Hashem's help, I hope to tie everything together from this introduction, from the explanation of these quotes. Writes Rebbe Nachman, V'sipar Rab Shimon shepam achas, acha shenasa meforsam. Rabbi Shimon is telling over the story, and Rebbe Nachman has written it down, that on one occasion, after Rebbe Nachman was already famous throughout Europe, Nasa im Rabbeinu zal derech kfar osatin. Rabbi Shimon was traveling with Rebbe Nachman, and they passed by the village of Osiatin. Shesham yaga Rabbeinu zal b'avodas hagdola bebeis chaisnai. And there in this city, where his father-in-law lived, he struggled and toiled hard, very, very hard, with great difficulty in his devotions to become close to Hashem. Shahaya Darsham, and he lived in that city. V'nasa imoy derech hasadais v'chayotz behen. And we traveled through the countryside and through the fields of Osiatin. This is Reb Shimon and Reb Nachman traveling together. V'haya Rabbeinu zal miskagea ma'oid v'amar. And Rabbeinu was filled with great emotion, and he says the following: Kama hayatoiv lafane bakan. How great the experience, the time that I had here. Ki b'chol pasia o pasia hergashti tam gan Eden. With every single step I took here in Osiatin, I felt the taste of Gan Eden. Kisham be'elu hadrachim hayaragil lelech ulehispoided. Because in all the paths and all the walks and all the times I was just simply moving through Osiatin, I used that time to be able to regulate myself in my avoda and to do his spoididus, to speak one-on-one with Hashem in isolation. V'haya meitzer u'miskagea ma'od. And Rabbeinu was filled with this sadness and this emotion from telling this over. V'amar, and he continues, Haloi kan haya toiv lefane ma'od. Here in the city of Osiatin, it was so good for me to be here. V'lama li hipursam shel achshav. Why do I need this present fame? And I'm not sure we can fully understand the emotion or what Rabbeinu must have been feeling at that time, but I'm sure, I think we can tap into a little bit and just imagine that this time he was really working on himself and probably had that close connection with Hashem, of just him and Hashem in those private moments. Continues Rebbe Nachman, Gam oid pam achas sipar b'fanai, that Rebbe Nachman also was once with Rebbe Nachman, and he heard the following story. As Nachman, this is what Rebbe Nachman is getting over, that when Rebbe Nachman was a young man, when he used to do his spoididus in a certain river or a field, depending where it was, when Rebbe Nachman would return from doing his spoididus, he felt as if the whole entire world was just a whole different world than the one he had been in and experienced before he had gone in to do his spoididus. And it felt as if it was a completely different world. And it appeared as if it wasn't even the same one that he had been living in before. So let's break this down a little bit. I want to start with touching on the quote from the Kotzker Rebbe, and I feel this beautifully illustrates what we're learning here. So Rebbe Nachman, in what we just learned, is describing his longing when returning to the village of Osiatin, where he had once engaged in intensive avodas Hashem and his spoididus. And as he walked through those fields, he sighs with this longing how good it was for him here. With every step he took, he felt like it was a taste of Gan Eden. Yet, despite being in the same physical location, he was no longer the same person who had once walked those paths in seclusion and hisbodedus, which is very, very close to what the quote from the Kotzker Rebbe said previously, and I'll touch on it one more time just so we all remember. Says the Kotzker Rebbe, a person may return to the same place, but he is never the same person. And we can clearly see this playing out right here. So, Rebbe Nachman takes this concept even further, I might add. But also, I just want to point out one thing. Very interesting that the quote from Heraclitus, the Greek philosopher, was discussing a river. And I just find it very cool that here in this sefer, or what we just learned, was also discussing a river and discussing concepts of change. I just find that cool. I just wanted to share that. But anyway, I digress. So Rebbe Nachman, I feel, takes this concept from the Kotzker Rebbe about change a little bit further. So when he said, when I would return from seclusion in the forest or fields, the entire world appeared new to me. It seemed like a completely different world, not at all like it was before. And this is, I feel, a very deep perspective in Chassidus, that renewal is not only external, but also internal. Every moment offers us the opportunity for a person to step into a brand new world, because their das, their consciousness, and their nefesh, their soul state, and also their perception of the entire world based on their experiences have shifted. So we can clearly see that there's this chassidut, there's this renewal, and Rabbeinu himself is pointing this out from his own avodah, having reflected on his past experiences. And this is why he stressed the importance of starting each day as well in our own avodah. So when we're doing mitzvahs, when we're doing our own hisbodedus every single day, we should also be saying that right now, Hashem, I'm connecting to you brand new. This is me starting anew, even at this moment, and trying to move on from what has happened in the past. And each day, when we're doing our mitzvahs, when we're talking to Hashem, when we're doing our tefillah and our torah learning, to begin anew as well. So, just to conclude, what's the avodah? How can we internalize this? How can we take what we learned tonight and make it practical for our own lives? I don't know if any of you have heard the new Thank You Hashem album, Happy Clappy 2. I'm not getting paid for this, so it's a quick unsponsored plug. But they have a really great song called What's the Avodah? So we're going to call this segment What's the Avodah? So I think we can take away three things. I've taken away three things for myself, and I want to share those three things with you. Number one, I think we must recognize that no experience is ever exactly the same. Whether it's tefillah, or it's learning torah, or even a conversation with a friend, in Breslov we call it sichas chaverim, each moment contains new divine energy that we can tap into, and that's waiting to be uncovered. And if we tap into this energy every day, when we thank Hashem for the day He's given us, when we do a mitzvah, or we talk to Hashem in our hisbodedus, we can connect to Hashem in a new way in each of these moments. So that's point number one. I think lesson number two we can take from this is that our past spiritual experiences are real. They definitely are, but we cannot live in them at all times. We have to move on from them. And Rebbe Nachman, although he longed for the purity of those earlier days from what he was recounting to Reb Shimon, he still recognized that his current mission was very different, and that was the mission that he had to stick with. And we must embrace the past without becoming trapped in it. And the shaman does not move forward by holding on to the past, but by integrating into a continuous living process of aliyah, elevating each experience as part of an ongoing journey towards deeper closeness with Hashem. So, by embracing the past without being confined by it, allows us to evolve, transform, and step into new spiritual mission that each stage of life requires. And lastly, point number three that I feel we can take away from what we learned tonight is that true growth means stepping forward into the unknown. Just as a river never stops flowing, our journey in Avodas Hashem must continue to progress. What was enough yesterday might not be enough for today. We can always build upon and grow from there. And what we achieve today might not suffice tomorrow. We can build on that the next day. So with that, I want to thank you all who have joined tonight, who are watching live or watching the recording on YouTube. Thank you very, very much. And Emir Hashem, we will continue next week with Kufches in Chayei Moharan. Already looking forward to it. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a fantastic evening.